As I was saying before, my journey has been initiated through an accident. Now, I feel very strongly that one's political education shouldn't be accidental, but the fact that it is for many people of color speaks to the oppression that we've experienced in this country. That understanding of ourselves, our history, our identity, our positive role in shaping that for ourselves, our sense of self-determination, our sense of controlling our own communities, all that should not be introduced to us through accident. That should be a systematic part of our upbringing through the educational system, through other institutions such as church, our home life, and so forth and so on. But I believe very strongly that once you introduce education or intellectualism in the life of a person, that spawns more interest, more curiosity, eagerness for more intellectualism, more education. And that has historically been detrimental in the life of a slave. And so our lives in America, African American lives, have been largely a journey of slavery. That is the controlling of one's mind. So that particular perspective was introduced to me. That was some of the early beginnings of my political transformation as a man. And now I am still on a journey of a political, if I say political transformation, or a political journey. And that political journey has taken me from an understanding of how important identity is, understanding who you truly are, your historical roots, your understanding of what your role is in terms of your relationship to other people, not just other people like yourself, but the whole human family. That has been something that has been part of my journey. And now my journey has taken me to my current effort, which is Young Man's Success Series. And now Young Man's Success Series is really kind of spawned more directly from my experiences in the Boston Public Schools or in urban schools. And when you go into urban schools, you really see the legacy of all the slavery, all the historical problems that black people have suffered in America. And the key, the kernel of the problem is one of anti-intellectualism. Because in honesty, you cannot have an educated slave. An educated slave, and the slave master understood this, that an educated slave is an economic liability, because educated slaves start to ask questions, starts to challenge authority, starts to want to be free, start wanting to know more about who he is. And so it was imperative that the master, the slave owner made it imperative to deny access to education, as we do know, and this is a well-known fact, that it was against the law to teach a black person how to read. And now, once slavery was legally abolished in 1865, it became imperative to deny the free African American the access to education. As we know, this is a well-known fact, that there was two institutions that was targeted by those that sought the demise and the limitation and the marginalization of African people. And those institutions was the church and the schoolhouse. And because the church was a organizing instrument, that Europeans had to make sure that they burned churches, that they eliminated churches, that they found ways to close churches to deny black people access to the church. The same was the case with the schoolhouse. So those are two institutions that are instrumental and vital to the success of any community, and they made sure that those particular institutions were either controlled by them and denied our control of those things. So those are some very historical facts that have led and catapulted me to doing what I am doing now in the school system. Because when you go into the schools now, you see a tremendous anti-intellectualism among students of color, which isn't to say that every black student is a part of this anti-intellectual flow, but a vast majority are. They are connected to the legacy of slavery, of the legacy of racism, which has taught them that intellectual matters are the province of someone else, not you. So if you and I were to go into any urban school, that houses black and brown people in this country, we will see anything and everything that's going on in those schools that not reminiscent or not reflective of education. So, in response to that, I felt that it was necessary to create an environment for young people to start to develop their intellectual capacity, not just so they themselves can go off and personally prosper, but for them to also go out and be community organizers, community leaders, be able to give back to their community the same things that Young Man Success Series and myself are trying to give to them. So this is really like a relay race where one passes the baton on to one leg of the race, and then the next leg of the race is ran, and then that person passes on the baton to the next person. And so this give back, this reach one, each one reach one, each one teach one concept, nothing new about it, but the execution of it is necessary within the schools and within the communities of color, because we have to transform ourselves in order for us to transform our communities. And so Young Man Success Series is very vital to this process. We're trying to engage people and entice people into what we call a paradigm shift of seeing oneself differently, of seeing one's capacity different, of seeing one's potential differently. And at the cornerstone is this of this process of paradigm shifting is to see one's academic life, one's intellectual capacity different. Right now, as a result of the legacy of racism, the legacy of slavery, the legacy of Jim Crow, too many people of color have been convinced that they themselves are not intellectual beings, that they themselves are not authors and creators and architects of an intellectual life, that they themselves are more physical beings. Now we have to reverse that thinking. We have to push back on that thinking, and this is where paradigm shifting comes in. This is where being proactive about one's personal life, struggling with oneself, the idea of taking charge, being the one's author and creator and one's pilot of one's life. Now this requires a lot of change, a lot of pushback, a lot of work to get the seat in order to get people to embrace a whole new way of thinking. But the earlier you can do it with a person, the better. And that's why we engage those between 14 and 20, because during that time period, 14 and 20, are the years in which people are making decisions that are going to govern and shape the rest of their lives. And so what we want to do is embrace, cast a wide net and recruit young people to sit down and engage in a process for their own personal transformation that will one day be part of a community transformation, and who knows, even a societal transformation. But the process of transformation starts with the individual. As it happened with me, it can happen with others. And so this is the process in which we are engaged with Young Man Success Series.